My name is Lucas. I'm 35 years old and a business administrator. For a long time, I believed I had a solid marriage. Not perfect, of course. What relationship is, but solid. Marina and I had been together for 8 years, building a life that, in everyone's eyes, seemed enviable. She, a talented 33-year-old architect, was always admired for her creativity and energy. We met at a business fair where her design booth was next to mine. I remember her smile that first day, the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about projects. It was that enthusiasm that won me over. Our early years were intense. We bought an apartment, renovated it together, made plans. Arguments existed, of course, but we always found our way back to each other. At least, that's what I believed. The change was subtle at first. Small gestures of affection that began to disappear. The "good morning," accompanied by a kiss, turned into just a word muttered while she checked her phone. The messages during the day, asking how I was doing, simply stopped. I tried to talk about this a few times, but Marina always had an excuse ready. Stress at work, an important project, fatigue. People go through phases, I told myself. Relationships have ups and downs, I repeated like a mantra. But deep down, I knew something else was happening. People don't just wake up one day and start treating their partner like an inconvenience. Changes like that don't happen without reason. It was on a Thursday that I realized I could no longer ignore the signs. Marina arrived late, again. When supper, I asked where she had been. She just shrugged and said, "Around," without even looking me in the eyes. That gesture of indifference hurt more than any fight we'd ever had. "Marina, we need to talk," I insisted, feeling my heart race. "Something is wrong between us, and we can't keep pretending everything is fine." She finally raised her eyes from her phone, looking at me with an expression I had never seen before. Cold, distant, as if she were looking at a stranger. "There's nothing to talk about, Lucas. I'm tired, that's all." But I knew there was more, much more, and I was determined to discover the truth, even if it shattered the world we had built together. Confirmation of my fears came a few days later. Andre, a colleague with whom I had built a good friendship, called me during lunch. His voice sounded uncomfortable, as if he was about to deliver bad news. "Lucas, I don't want to be that kind of friend, but I think you should investigate Marina a bit. I saw her yesterday with a man at Casablanca restaurant, and they didn't seem to be just friends." Casablanca restaurant, one of the most exclusive places in the city, known for its intimate atmosphere and exorbitant prices. A place you go to impress or to avoid being seen. I remained silent, with the phone pressed to my ear as my mind processed the information. My first reaction was to deny the obvious. No, it couldn't be Marina, not my wife. There had to be some explanation. But then I remembered how she had been acting. The distance, the secrecy, the late arrivals, the always locked phone, the change in attitude, and I realized something terrifying. This wasn't coming out of nowhere. A part of me already knew. "Are you sure it was her?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Completely sure, Lucas. I'm so sorry." That night, I observed Marina while pretending to read a book. Her phone never left her side. If she went to the kitchen, the phone accompanied her. If she got up to get water, there went the phone. At night, I saw the glow of the screen illuminating her face while she thought I was asleep. "Who are you talking to so late?" I asked once. "Just a friend," she replied without looking at me. "Which friend?" Her response was curt. "Why do you care so much?" One night, I took advantage of a moment of carelessness. Marina left her phone on the sofa while she went to the bathroom. My heart was pounding as I picked it up. I tried to unlock it, but the password had changed. I tried the old one to no avail. My stomach tightened. Marina and I had never hidden our passwords from each other. This wasn't just a random change. She was hiding something. I put the phone back exactly where it was and sat down, thoughtful. If Marina was cheating on me, she couldn't erase every trace. People make mistakes when they feel comfortable. They become careless, and that's when they're exposed. If I couldn't access her phone, I would have to take a different approach. I needed to see it with my own eyes. The opportunity came a few days later. Marina told me she was going out to do a few quick things. No additional details. No mention of who she would be with. Vague enough to trigger all my internal alarms. I waited a few minutes after she left, then took my keys and followed her in my car, maintaining a safe distance. I followed her for several streets until she stopped in front of Casablanca restaurant. She got out of her car and walked directly to the entrance with the confidence of someone who had been there before. And then I saw him. A tall, well-dressed man, waiting for her at the entrance. He didn't seem surprised to see her. In fact, he smiled and gave her a kiss that was definitely not just friendly. I took out my phone and photographed everything. The man opened the door for her and they both entered the restaurant. I didn't go in. I didn't call her. I didn't make a scene. I simply stayed there for a few more minutes, looking at the restaurant's facade, contemplating the reality of my marriage crumbling before my eyes. Then, without a word, I started my car and drove back home. Marina returned that night acting completely normal, as if she had just come back from shopping and not from a romantic date with another man. This feigned normalcy was what hurt the most, seeing how she could look me in the eyes and lie without the slightest remorse. During the next week, I kept silent, observing her patterns, documenting her absences. Each night I reviewed the photos on my phone, not out of masochism, but to remind myself that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't imagining things. One day, while Marina was at work, I decided to take a further step. I turned on our shared computer and tried to access her email. To my surprise, she was still using the same password we had always shared for joint accounts. Perhaps she thought I would never check, or maybe she had simply been careless. What I found made my heart stop for a moment. Among the recent emails were several from a medical clinic. The most recent had an attachment: blood test results. Upon opening it, the confirmation jumped out in bold: pregnancy test, positive. I felt as if someone had punched me directly in the stomach. Marina was pregnant. And given the distance between us in recent months, the coldness, the lack of intimacy, that child couldn't be mine. There were more emails. Messages between her and someone named Raphael. Fragments of conversations about our future together, and how to handle the situation with Lucas. The man from the restaurant had a name, and together they were planning how to get rid of me. I printed everything. The emails, the medical results, the photographs. I kept them in a folder that I hid in my office. I wasn't sure exactly when I would use them, but I wanted to be prepared. I decided it was time to take control of the situation. I wasn't going to wait for Marina to decide when and how to end our marriage. I contacted a divorce specialist lawyer through a digital platform. I explained my situation, sent copies of all the evidence I had collected, and together we began preparing the divorce papers. The lawyer was clear. With this evidence, you have a solid position. We can get a fair settlement without you being financially disadvantaged. It was strange to talk about economic terms when what was really at stake was my life, my trust, everything I thought I knew about my marriage. But I understood that I needed to protect myself in all aspects. One morning, as I was preparing for work, Marina surprised me with something unexpected. "I'm preparing a special dinner for you tonight," she said, her voice unusually soft. I froze for a second, fingers hovering over the last button of my shirt. It had been months since Marina had cooked for me, or even asked me how my day had been. And now, suddenly, she wanted to make a special dinner? I didn't respond immediately. I wanted to see if she would add anything else, some explanation, but she didn't. "Okay," I finally said, keeping a neutral tone. As I drove to work, my mind wouldn't stop racing. What did this dinner mean? Was it an attempt at reconciliation? Did she feel guilty? Or was she setting the stage for something else? Perhaps to tell me she was leaving me for her lover. What Marina didn't know was that I already had my own plans. The divorce papers were ready, waiting in a folder in my briefcase. And I had an ace up my sleeve that she would never expect. That night, I returned home with an indescribable feeling. A mixture of sadness, determination, and surprisingly something akin to liberation. Whatever Marina was planning for that dinner, I was prepared. When I entered the house that night, the aroma of my favorite dish filled the air. The table was meticulously set, candles lit, wine glasses filled. Marina had clearly made an effort to recreate the atmosphere of our early dates. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of nostalgia for what we once had. "Do you like it?" she asked, appearing from the kitchen wearing an apron. Her smile seemed genuine, but I could no longer trust my perceptions. "It looks very nice," I replied, placing my briefcase on the sofa, the divorce papers hidden inside. Waiting. During dinner, Marina spoke animatedly about superficial topics. She avoided any serious conversation, as if preparing the ground for something important. I nodded, responded when necessary, but my mind was elsewhere. I observed her gestures, her expressions, looking for clues of what was really happening. It was after dessert when she finally got to the point. "Lucas," she began, her voice suddenly serious. "I've been thinking for a while and I believe we need to separate." I looked directly into her eyes. There was no surprise on my face, which clearly disconcerted her. You're not surprised, she said. Not as a question, but as a statement. No, Marina, I'm not. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, as if my lack of reaction had altered her internal script. Can we talk about this like adults? She continued. I've met someone. His name is Raphael. He's different. He makes me feel alive again. I listened to her words, so rehearsed, so carefully selected to hurt as little as possible while justifying the unjustifiable. And in that moment, I felt a strange calm. The pain was still there, pulsing beneath the surface, but something new had also emerged. Clarity. How long has this been going on? I asked, though I already knew the answer. A few months, she confessed, lowering her gaze. It wasn't planned, it just happened. I want you to know that I never intended to hurt you. It was then that I made a decision. I could have taken out the divorce papers at that moment, shown her that I already knew everything. I could have confronted her with the photos, the emails, all the evidence. But something inside told me to wait, that it wasn't the right time. Yet, I understand, I said simply. I think I need time to process this. Marina seemed relieved, as if she had expected a scene, shouting, accusations. My apparent acceptance completely disarmed her. The following weeks were strange. We slept in separate rooms. We barely crossed paths at home. Marina went out more and more often, probably to meet Raphael. Meanwhile, I immersed myself in a deep introspection that I had never experienced before. I began seeing a therapist, not to save my marriage, which I already knew was lost, but to understand myself, to comprehend why I had ignored the signs for so long, why I had allowed the situation to go so far. Pain is inevitable, my therapist told me in one session, but suffering is optional. You have to decide what you do with that pain. Those words resonated deeply within me. I started to reconsider who I was beyond my identity as Marina's husband. I resumed old passions, photography, hiking, reading. I reconnected with friends I had neglected. Each small step took me further from the abyss of bitterness that threatened to swallow me. One night, while reviewing old photo albums from our early years together, I realized something important. Despite the betrayal and deception, our time together had not been in vain. We had shared moments of genuine happiness. Those experiences had shaped me, for better or worse. But I also understood that I couldn't allow Marina's betrayal to define the rest of my life. I needed to reclaim my narrative, take control of my own story. It was then that I decided I was ready for the final confrontation. Not from a place of vengeance or resentment, but from a place of truth and closure. Marina had planned another meeting to discuss the terms of our separation. She didn't know it, but I had my own agenda for that conversation. This time, I would bring not only the divorce papers, but also the evidence of the pregnancy. It was time to put all the cards on the table. Marina chose an elegant yet discreet restaurant for our conversation about terms. A neutral place, I suppose. I arrived 10 minutes early on purpose, wanting to be centered, prepared for what was coming. I ordered a whiskey while waiting, not to get drunk, but to calm those last treacherous nerves that threatened to make me falter. I saw her enter with that air of confidence I had always admired. She wore a navy blue suit that enhanced her figure. For an instant I felt that familiar pain, that pang of loss for what we once had. But I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I came prepared. "Thank you for coming," she said, as she sat across from me. "I've spoken with my lawyer, and I think we can do this in a civilized manner." Civilized, I repeated, the word sounding hollow. That sounds good. The waiter came to take her order. She ordered mineral water, no alcohol. Another small detail confirming what I already knew. "I've prepared a proposal for the division of assets," she continued when we were alone. "Again, I think it's fair for both of us." She pulled some documents from her purse and slid them toward me. I looked at them superficially, observing how she had divided our lives into percentages and properties. "I also want you to know that I hold no grudges," she added in a tone that sounded rehearsed. "Sometimes people simply take different paths. No one is to blame." I felt a bitter laugh forming in my throat. "No one is to blame?" The words came out stronger than I intended. Some people at nearby tables turned to look. Marina visibly tensed. "Lucas, please. We're in a public place." "You're right," I said, lowering my voice. "Let's keep it civilized." I opened my briefcase and took out my own folder. I placed it on the table next to her documents. "I've also prepared some papers," I explained calmly. "But before we get into details, there's something I want to know, Marina. Is there anything else I should know? Anything you haven't told me yet?" Her eyes momentarily shifted. I could see the calculation in them, evaluating what to say, what to hide. "I don't know what you mean," she finally responded. "I'm giving you the chance to be completely honest with me," I insisted. For once, after months of lies. Marina let out a sigh. "Lucas, I've already told you the essentials. I met someone else. It wasn't planned, it just happened. I want to move forward with my life, and I need you to do the same." I observed her for a long moment. This was the woman with whom I had shared 8 years of my life. The person who knew my dreams, my fears, my most intimate secrets. And now she was a stranger sitting across from me, reciting soap opera phrases. "What about Raphael?" I finally asked. The color drained from her face. "How do you know his name?" "I know many things, Marina. I know about Casablanca restaurant. I know about the secret meetings. I know that this didn't just happen. It was planned, meticulous, calculated." Her hands trembled slightly. She didn't respond. "I also know about the pregnancy," I added, keeping my voice low but firm. This time, her reaction was visceral. Her eyes opened completely, a mixture of shock and fear in them. "How?" Her voice broke. "How do I know? Does it really matter? What matters is that you plan to hide it from me, perhaps forever." I opened the folder and extracted the printouts of the emails from the clinic, the pregnancy test results, the photographs from the restaurant. I placed them one by one on the table, like a poker player revealing a winning hand. "I had the right to know," she continued, regaining some composure. "It's my body, my decision." "And it's your lie," I replied. "I'm not questioning your right to decide about your body, Marina. I'm questioning your decision to systematically lie to me for months, to plan a life behind my back while pretending everything was fine." Tears began to form in her eyes. I didn't know if they were from genuine remorse or simply from being discovered. "What do you want, Lucas? Revenge? To humiliate me? You already have your divorce papers. Let's sign them and be done with this." "I don't want revenge, Marina. I just wanted the truth. And now that I have it, I can move forward." It was then that I showed her the divorce documents I had prepared with my lawyer. They were fair, not even punitive. I wasn't looking to ruin her financially or destroy her reputation. I just wanted a clean break. "These are my terms," I said. "Review them with your lawyer if you want, but I think you'll find they're reasonable." Marina looked at them for several minutes in silence. Finally, she looked up. "How can you be so calm? How can you simply accept it all?" "I'm not accepting it, Marina. I'm choosing how to respond, and I choose not to allow your betrayal to define the rest of my life." We signed the divorce papers 2 weeks later, in an extrajudicial mediation that turned out to be much less traumatic than I had expected. The confrontation at the restaurant had left Marina without arguments or excuses. My lawyer mentioned that he had rarely seen a divorce concluded so quickly. It was strange to see 8 years of marriage reduced to a stack of legal documents and signatures. There were no arguments about property or assets. We both wanted to end this as soon as possible. The apartment we had renovated together was put up for sale, the furniture divided, the bank accounts separated. The life we had built together, systematically dismantled in less than a month. The day we finalized the proceedings, I found myself not knowing what to do. I had been so focused on surviving the process that I hadn't seriously thought about what would come after. I was standing in the parking lot of the building where we signed the last documents, the keys to my new apartment in one hand and the signed papers in the other. "It's over," I told myself, expecting to feel relief, or perhaps a delayed explosion of pain. But what I felt was more complex, a void that asked to be filled. An open space full of unknown possibilities. That night, sitting alone in my new, still half-empty apartment, I made an impulsive decision that, in retrospect, would change my life. I opened my laptop and bought a plane ticket to leave in a week, a 1-month trip that would turn into a full year of discovery. I didn't have a specific plan, just the determination to get away from everything familiar and find myself in the process. My savings would allow me to travel modestly for a good while, and I had negotiated an extended leave from my job. There was nothing tying me to this city, to this country, to these memories. I informed my family and close friends about my decision. Some thought it was crazy, an exaggerated reaction to my divorce. Others understood that I needed a radical change. Andre, my work friend, was the most understanding. "Sometimes we need to lose ourselves to find ourselves," he said, while helping me store the rest of my belongings in storage. "Just promise me you'll stay in touch." The day before leaving, I received a message from Marina. It was the first time we had any kind of communication since signing the papers. I heard you're leaving, she wrote. I just wanted to wish you a good trip and ask for your forgiveness. I know it's late, but I needed to say it. I read the message several times, unsure of how to respond or if I should. Finally, I opted for honesty. Thank you, Marina. I wish you the best too. Take care. There were no more messages after that. My first destination was Spain, a country I had always wanted to visit. I stayed in small hostels and cheap apartments, avoiding tourist spots and instead seeking authentic experiences. In Barcelona, I met a group of travelers like me, people in transition, looking for something they couldn't name exactly. One night, after several glasses of wine, I told them my story. I felt no bitterness in doing so, just a strange sense of distance, as if I were talking about someone else. It's incredible how you handle it, an Australian woman named Emily commented. Most would be consumed by resentment. I had my share of resentment, I admitted. But I discovered that resentment is like taking poison and expecting the other person to die. That phrase resonated with the group. Someone suggested that I should write it down, along with other reflections I had during my healing process. You should write a book, said an older man, a retired professor who was traveling around Europe. Your perspective is refreshing. That night, in my room, I began to write, not with the intention of publishing, but as a way to process my thoughts, to give them shape and examine them in the light of the written word. What began as a therapeutic exercise became an unexpected passion. As I traveled from country to country, through Italy, Greece, Turkey, and beyond, my manuscript grew. It was no longer just about my divorce, but about loss, renewal, personal discovery, and perhaps most importantly, forgiveness. Forgiveness not only toward Marina, but also toward myself, for not seeing the signs, for ignoring my intuition, for allowing my identity to dissolve in the relationship. The more I wrote and traveled, the more clarity I found. The landscapes changed, the languages varied, but the internal search continued, increasingly focused, increasingly fruitful. 3 years have passed since that day when I signed the divorce papers and decided to embark on a journey that would completely change my life. Today, as I look out from the window of my study at the mountains surrounding my new home, I find it hard to recognize the man I once was. My book, Rebuilding: The Art of Rebirth After Betrayal, was published a year ago and, to my surprise, quickly became an international success. What started as a therapeutic journal transformed into a guide for those going through similar situations. I receive daily messages from readers who have identified with my story and found comfort and guidance in my words. This unexpected success led me to a new career as a marriage counselor and public speaker. It's ironic that someone whose marriage failed is now helping others strengthen their relationships. But perhaps it's precisely my experience that allows me to clearly see the dynamics that can destroy or save a bond. I heard about Marina about a year ago through a mutual friend. She gave birth to a baby girl and apparently is still with Raphael. I felt nothing negative when I heard the news. Only sincere wishes that they have found the happiness we couldn't build together. In my travels around the world, I've met extraordinary people who have taught me about resilience, forgiveness, and authenticity. In Bali, an elderly meditation master told me something that became a personal mantra. Scars are simply reminders that we have been stronger than what tried to hurt us. For a time, I thought I would never fully trust or love again. The fear of being betrayed once more created an invisible barrier between myself and any possible romantic connection. But gradually, as I healed, that barrier began to dissolve. 8 months ago, I met Lucia, a Spanish visual artist, during one of my conferences in Madrid. I wasn't looking for a relationship, but there was something in her honest perspective on life that resonated deeply with me. We began writing to each other after my return. Deep conversations about art, life, and personal growth. We've visited each other several times, and now we're carefully exploring the possibility of something more serious. What I've learned on this journey is that the deepest wounds, those we believe will destroy us, can become portals to more authentic and complete versions of ourselves. It's not the pain that transforms us, but what we decide to do with it. A few weeks ago, I received an email that left me speechless. It was from Marina. "I just finished your book," she wrote. "I never imagined how much pain I caused you. And although I know an email doesn't erase years of damage, I wanted you to know that you've helped me understand my own behavior. What I did has no justification, but your ability to transform that experience into something that helps others has inspired me to be more honest in my own life. I'm proud of the person you've become, Lucas. I replied thanking her for her words and sincerely wishing her the best. That exchange gave me a sense of closure that I didn't know I still needed. Sometimes when I give my conferences, someone in the audience inevitably asks, if you could go back, would you avoid marrying her? Would you avoid all that pain? My answer is always the same. I wouldn't change anything. Every moment, even the most painful ones, brought me exactly where I needed to be. And it's true. The pain of betrayal, the emptiness of divorce, the loneliness of my first days traveling alone, all of it forms an integral part of who I am now. There is no bitterness in that recognition, only gratitude for the complete journey with its ups and downs. On my desk lies the manuscript of my second book. This one's centered not on loss, but on reconstruction, on how to transform the ashes of what was into the foundations of what can be. In the end, I understood that losing what I thought was my entire life allowed me to discover that life is much bigger, much richer, and much more surprising than I had ever imagined. Every morning when the sun rises over the mountains, I remind myself that we are not defined by what happens to us, but by how we choose to respond. And every day, I choose to respond with gratitude, with openness, and with the conviction that the best is always yet to come. Sometimes, we need something to break completely so we can build something more beautiful, more authentic, and more truly ours. It's not the ending that matters, but the new beginnings we dare to create.